I actually wanted to get into some winners and losers of the MLB offseason so far. Certainly some articles on ESPN, MLB.com have come out with stuff like this, and I thought I'd give my own interpretation here and who I think the winners and losers for the MLB season are. So here we go. My winners for the 2022 offseason so far as of 10/22 on December 20th. So obviously, you never know what's going to happen after this. We'll actually, you know what? Instead of doing winners, all winners, let's do a winner and then a loser. We'll just go back and forth. How's that? So my first winner, we're going to do the obvious one, the New York Mets. The New York Mets, they had a huge offseason where they spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to bring some more talent into their team. They did lose Jacob deGrom, but they replaced him with Justin Verlander. They got Kodai Senga out of Japan. They re-signed Brandon Nimmo. They got David Robertson and more and more and more. And they spent, I obviously went over it in my last podcast and in my Mets spending spree video, how much money exactly they spent. I believe the number was $264 million in annual money over the last two seasons, somewhere around there. Absolutely bonkers money. And so they have really, they've pushed all their chips to the table, guys. The Mets are here. They want to win a World Series right now. And certainly, if that's their goal, they have certainly helped accomplish that this offseason. My first loser of the offseason is going to be another obvious one, and that is the Boston Red Sox. Obviously, as a Red Sox fan, that is not what you want to hear ever, you being a loser of the free agent period, but that's what's happened. The Red Sox, the obvious stuff, right? You lost Xander Bogaerts. You lost J.D. Martinez. You lost Matt Strahm. Matt Strahm was one of the only bullpen guys, the guys in your bullpen that didn't completely stink. He wasn't great. He had a 3.8 ERA and blew some saves and had a handful of losses, but he didn't have a 5 ERA, so that's a positive because a lot of guys in your bullpen had 5 ERAs. So, you know what? I would have taken Matt Strahm back considering the year he had, but unfortunately we lost him as well. So, you let Xander Bogaerts go. You let J.D. Martinez go. Where do you go from here? You signed Justin Turner just the other day, which, I mean, you know what? If you're going to replace J.D. Martinez, you might as well replace him with another old guy who can only hit and maybe play the field every once in a while, but you really wish he didn't because he's not very good there anymore because he's old. That's Justin Turner for you, so great. But, I mean, it just... The messages that were sent this offseason by the Red Sox was not good. They DFA'd Jeter Downs, which makes the Mookie trade look even worse. They DFA'd Eric Hosmer, which makes you wonder why in the heck did you trade Jason Groom to just get a third of a season, of a losing season where you were last in your division out of Eric Hosmer. What was the point there? So the Red Sox offseason made no sense. I talked about it last week, so I won't get super deep into it again. But they're my first loser this offseason. My second winner is going to be the Philadelphia Phillies. Division rivals. They went to the World Series last year, and they made big splashes in this free agency period. Obviously, the biggest being Trey Turner. 11 years, $300 million. So a lot of money there. Certainly some other signings as well that are going to help out, like Taijuan Walker. So Matt Strahm, I do believe, also signed there as well. So, you know what? Good offseason for the Phillies, especially with the Mets just handing out money like it's all like, we're all going to disappear tomorrow. The Phillies needed to have a big offseason to really keep up and show that their World Series run is not a fluke. We'll see if they can prove that, but they have gotten off to a good start. My second loser of the offseason is going to be Jacob deGrom. Now, that might be surprising to some of you. I don't think he's a loser in terms of the money he got because he did get a ton of money. He got a contract that I'm sure he was floored to get. I genuinely did not think that deGrom would get more than 1 or 2 years from anybody just because of the injury history, just because of his age. He's already 35. I certainly think the annual money is what he would have gotten. I think he probably would have I figured he would have taken a 1 year, $35 million deal from say even the Yankees, right? Some team that just needs another guy to get in there and be an ace, help them make a postseason run. That's what I thought would happen. 5 years, $180 million for Jacob deGrom is a crazy amount of money for a guy that's that injury prone. So in that way, he's definitely not a loser. He's a loser in this instance because of where he ended up. I think he had to take that money for the security, and I think anybody that was willing to offer that money is where he was going to go. I think at that point, that's kind of what happened, because other than that, Texas is not a fit. Yes, it's a more pitcher-friendly ballpark than Citi Field, but for me, again, it does team-wise, organization-wise, where he is in his career versus where the Rangers are in their rebuild doesn't make any sense to me. I think that he is going to toil there like he's toiled in New York for the last 10 years and not really do much. He's going to have the same issues he had in New York, where he famously was having like a 1.9 ERA in his losses, and he had 15 losses in a season despite having a 1.9 or 2.1 ERA in his losses, something like that. He's going to have the same thing in Texas, because guess what, guys? Texas isn't good. They lost 99 games last year. 99! With Corey Seager, with Marcus Semien, with Martin Perez having by far the best season of his career. I don't think he's going to repeat that success. He might, but you never know. I just don't see the fit for Jacob deGrom. I never have. From the very beginning, I put out a short on my channel. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Giving it a C+. I'm not changing it until I see it otherwise. You know what? If the Rangers make a postseason run this year, I will happily and humbly admit that I was very wrong. But right now, I think it's general consensus among MLB fans that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense on the surface. But we'll see what happens. So for that reason, Jacob deGrom is my second loser of the offseason. Third winner is going to be the MLBPA. And I know that's not a team, and I know that's not a player, but hear me out. Just, let's say 5 years ago, with the exception of a few players, such as Bryce Harper, such as Mike Trout, such as Garrett Cole, guys that are literally like top 10 players in the MLB. You were lucky to get a 5-year contract. Really, you were. Because owners were not willing to spend that much money. Remember when JD Martinez hit like 803 home runs for the Diamondbacks in one season? And it took until spring training was 2 weeks in for anyone to give that man a deal. And he ended up with a 5-year contract. Now, granted, he was, in his 30s at that point, but you know what? So are a lot of the guys that signed big contracts this offseason. You were lucky to get a 5-year contract. People were begging to get a 5-year contract out of you. And guys that signed 10-year contracts were guys like Mike Trout, where you're like, well, yeah, duh. He's Mike Trout. He's possibly the best player to walk the earth if he's healthy. Guys like Bryce Harper, well, duh. He's a multiple-time MVP, and he's still in his prime. He's still young at the time. Like, these are the guys. Garrett Cole, he just won a Cy Young, and he's still only 28 years old. Duh, we're going to give him a long contract. That makes sense. But other guys, lower guys, you either had to take a short-term contract, or if you were a guy like Ronald Acuna, you want a 6-7-year contract, we're going to pay you $50 million for it. We're not going to give you barely any annual value because we don't want it to hurt our bottom line as owners. But now, this offseason, with the new CBA in tow, and the players getting some more power than they've had in the past, not a ton. I think the owners still kind of got the best of the CBA deals. But for me, the fact that guys are getting 11-year contracts, 13-year contracts in their late 20s, even early 30s, huge win for the MLBPA. Huge win for the players. And again, I don't think it's sustainable, because I think that these types of contracts are the types like you gave to Miguel Cabrera, like you gave to Albert Pujols, like you gave to Prince Fielder back in the day. These are the contracts that owners end up coming back to despise, and it's going to stop them from doing this in the future. But for right now, huge, huge win for the MLBPA. My third loser of the offseason is going to be the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, the Milwaukee Brewers had some good deals, right? They had some good moves. They traded for Jesse Winker. They gave up Colton Wong to get him, but they traded for Jesse Winker, who I think if he's healthy, he was the best player in that trade. I talked about that in my grading the MLB offseason video. But I think still the Milwaukee Brewers are losers because, again, what are you telling your fan base here? Because I don't know what they're telling their fan base. The Cubs are rebuilding. The Reds are the Reds. I don't get it. I don't get it. Right? So for me, it's just kind of... It's just kind of strange. I don't really know what Milwaukee's doing. I don't really understand where Milwaukee is going with anything that's happening. So for me, I'm just confused with what Milwaukee wants. Do they want to go to the postseason? Do they want to rebuild? I don't know. So I am going to go with that they are the third loser because they just don't seem to really have much of a direction. My fourth winner of the offseason is Xander Bogaerts. Now, I could have really said Trey Turner. I could have said Xander Bogaerts. I could have said Carlos Correa. Certainly, I was very tempted to put Carlos Correa on here, but I actually don't love that contract, even for him, because I don't think San Francisco is the best fit for him. But, for me, out of all of the players that signed long contracts, Xander Bogaerts is the one that won the most, because I genuinely don't know how the Padres thought that 11 years for Xander Bogaerts is a good idea. Trey Turner is in a similar boat, but at the very least, the Phillies are competing, and, they really just needed that one more piece in Trey Turner to really fill out that unbelievable power-heavy lineup. A guy that can run, a guy that can get on base, and a guy that's a plus defender. It's all the things they needed wrapped in one. Xander Bogaerts just gives the Padres more of what they already had. He didn't improve that team vastly over what they already had at the position. It's not like you had, no offense to Jose Iglesias, but it's not like you had a 35-year-old Jose Iglesias at shortstop and then you went out and signed Xander Bogaerts and there's your upgrade. No, they had Fernando Tatis, Jake Cronenworth, and I can't think of the other guy's name, but you had guys there that are already pretty good at shortstop. And you went and spent $300 million on a 30-year-old shortstop that you don't necessarily need. So instead of spending that money on bullpen pieces or on keeping some of your starting pitching depth, although they did keep some of it, but not a ton, or going out and signing a Justin Verlander or a Jacob deGrom or something like that, you sign Xander Bogaerts. And again, signing Xander Bogaerts is not necessarily the worst move in the world for them, but to pay that much money for it, and for 11 years, I don't think there was a lot of teams that were wanting to give Xander Bogaerts that much money. Now, I saw in interviews that the agent for Xander Bogaerts was basically saying that when we negotiate, we don't tell other teams what's already on the table because we want things to be genuine. Now, I don't really know how that makes much sense, because if I was competing for multiple jobs, let's say, I make it as an announcer someday, and I've got 3 teams that are wanting to pay me, but I really want one job. I really want to go to this job, but this job over here is going to pay me $30,000 more to go do that job. I'm at the very least going to walk into the job that I actually want in my head. I'm not going to tell them that, but in my head, and I'm going to say, hey, just so you know, I got an offer for $30,000 more than what you're offering me. So if you really want to keep me, you might want to pay up a little bit. And even if they don't go all the way to the $30,000, if they go to 20 or 25, I might consider staying if that's a job I really want. But if I don't tell them that, then they're just going to think, oh, my offer is great. And I'm going to go to a place that maybe I don't want to go just because they're paying me more. Now, if you're just going after the money, fine. You can have that strategy. And maybe Xander Bogaerts just wanted the big payday, which I don't blame him. He deserved it. But I wouldn't be surprised if it came out, and it might already have, I just might not have seen it. I wouldn't be surprised if it came out that the Padres offered 11 years and nobody else offered more than 5 or 6. I really wouldn't be surprised. And if that's the case, they screwed themselves. Because they probably could have gotten Xander for 7 years, 8. And at that contract, I would have been like, that's a good, you know what? That's a solid deal. Probably a little overpaid, maybe a little bit long, but you know what? That's good. But 11 years, just too much for me. So I think Xander Bogaerts, the fact that he got that contract, good for him. You know what? A lot of people are mad that the Red Sox let Xander Bogaerts go. I didn't want them to keep him at that contract. I really didn't. So, again, good for Xander. He got the money. He got a huge payday. He's a great shortstop. He deserved it. So he's my 4th winner. My 4th loser. Sorry, Braves fans. You're my 4th loser. The Atlanta Braves. I just think that your division got a lot better, a lot more competitive, and you didn't do anything to stop that and to show that you want to keep competing. You won 101 games last year. You lost in the first round of the playoffs to your division rival. And you didn't go out and do anything other than trading for Sean Murphy. Now, you got better at the catcher position from what you had. Fine. But was that your problem? Was that the reason you lost to the Phillies? Because your catchers weren't phenomenal in the postseason? Is that why? Because I don't think so. I think you needed some more starting pitching. I think you needed to re-solidify your bullpen. You let Kenley Jansen walk. Fine. But, you didn't do anything other than trade for Sean Murphy to really show and try and keep up with the Phillies, keep up with the Mets. 2 teams in your division that went completely all in, and you guys stayed pat. I hate to break it to you, but on paper, even when both your teams are fully healthy, all those teams fully healthy, you have the 3rd best team in the East, guys. You have the 3rd best team in the East on paper. Now, there's a reason why games aren't played on paper. I thought the Toronto Blue Jays on paper had the best team in the MLB last year. They were the 3rd best team in their own division and didn't make it out of the first round of the playoffs. There's a reason why things aren't played on paper. You won 1 World Series. You let Freddie Freeman walk out the door. I mean, I don't know what you guys think is going to happen if you stay pat and the Phillies and Mets are just going to run right past you. I don't know what you guys are thinking, but for me, you needed to show me more. You needed to show me like, hey, yeah, the other teams in our division are, they're reloading, but hey, we're still here. We won 100 games last year. Here's what we did. Here's the pitcher we got. Here's the bullpen piece we got. Here's the big bat we got. You traded for a catcher. That's not going to win you a World Series, guys. It just isn't. So, you guys are my 4th loser there. My last winner of the offseason is going to be the Chicago Cubs. Now, the Chicago Cubs going through a tough time, obviously, right? They are really struggling. They are going through a rebuild. But you know what? They got 2 pieces that I think you can really, really build around. Dansby Swanson signed with the Chicago Cubs. He's a guy not super young anymore. He's 28 years old, but a guy that you can throw right in at your number 2 spot in your lineup. For a young rebuilding team, that's a pretty good spot to be in. And Cody Bellinger, another young guy who's already won an MVP, and if he can turn his career around, you guys got a former MVP for really, really cheap. Now, I'm not saying that those 2 guys are going to make you compete this year because they're not. But it's a great start. You got a couple of young-ish, if you're talking about Swanson, then young and Cody Bellinger pieces that if all goes right, you can build around, and you're not really taking on much risk because, again, you're rebuilding right now. So, Now, you have something to build off of. You have a direction. And for a rebuilding team, that's really important to have a culture and to have a direction that you're wanting to go to so that your fans understand, your organization understands, players, coaches, everybody understands the vision, what you want to happen if you're the Chicago Cubs. I think they did a great job of showcasing that here this offseason with those two signings in particular. So good for the Cubs. They are my number 5 winner. And my number 5 loser is going to be the Cincinnati Reds. Now, why the Cincinnati Reds? They just didn't do anything this offseason. Like, I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about baseball or about sports or about every single player on every single team. I try to know as much as I can, but I'll never know everything about everyone. That's just, that's just difficult, especially with, I do NBA, I do NFL. Like, if you tell me, if you ask me what's the 9th best prospect in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization, I don't know. I'm not going to know the answer to that. But I could have missed it. But I didn't hear about a trade. I didn't see any signings. I didn't see anything about hiring new coaches or new ownership or nothing. Nothing. I haven't heard a blessed thing about the Cincinnati Reds all offseason. They haven't replaced Kyle Farmer. They haven't done anything, unless, of course, I am forgetting or I missed it. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to pretend like everything is exactly the way I think it is in my head, and the Cincinnati Reds have done zip, zero, zilch, nada this offseason. And I mean nothing. Like I said, I haven't even heard, they signed Nomar Mazara to a minor league contract. I know somebody did. I think it was the Orioles. Nothing. I haven't even heard they signed some former pretty okay reliever to a minor league contract. Nothing. Nothing from the Cincinnati Reds that I have seen. And again, when you're rebuilding, it's not super abnormal to do nothing or very little. But to literally do no things for an entire free agency period, where your name's not even brought up in any, the Cincinnati Reds are interested in bringing in Trey Turner. Well, they're never going to get him, but at least they're trying. Nothing. They weren't brought up in any trade talks. They weren't brought up in any free agency talks. They weren't brought up in anything. And you know what? Maybe Cincinnati fans, maybe you're used to that. And for that, I'm sorry. That's really upsetting. But if you're rebuilding, you gotta do something at some point. Poor Joey Votto's not getting any younger. The man's gonna be 58 years old, and he's still gonna be the best player on the Reds. Anyway. Hey guys, me again. Thank you so much for watching one of my clips from the Lopes Goes Last podcast. These clips are so much fun to do. I absolutely love making them, and I absolutely love doing them. And this podcast is my baby, so I really want this thing to grow, and I really want it to succeed. So if you did like what you see, please subscribe. Also hit that bell notification so you never miss any one of my episodes or one of my clips like this one. And please do also like and share these videos with your friends and your family so that we can make this thing grow as fast as possible. And I wanted to thank you again so much. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video and have a great rest of your day.